Like even right now, thinking back that moment, that's the worst mom moment because I was putting this idea in a 7-year-old head and she has to figure it out what to give up for the family. 7-year-old giving up something she loved the most just to make sure that the family can go on.
Welcome to the Double Shift Podcast. I'm Dani Kagan, a serial entrepreneur and new mom. I'm obsessed with having unfiltered and inspiring conversations that redefine modern motherhood and celebrate high-performing, ambitious women. From launching a business with a newborn to navigating family life, we dive deep with thought leaders who defy expectations. No filters, some cursing, and pure inspiration to empower you to seize life, live more vulnerably, and reach for greatness together. Okay, strap in, everyone. This is going to be a jam-packed episode because I'm here with one of the most powerful women in Canada. She is a mentor of mine. She is an entrepreneur turned investor, one of the few women leading a venture fund in Canada, Eva Lau. She is the co-founder and managing partner of Two Small Fish Ventures. She leverages her experience to help early-stage transformative tech companies achieve internet scale. Before launching that, Eva was a founding team member of Wattpad, one of Canada's most successful tech companies. Look them up. Prior to Wattpad, she was a director of product development of Brightspark Labs, a Toronto-based accelerator where she mentored numerous local startups. She is such a powerhouse. There are so many more things that we're going to discuss. I can't wait. Thank you for being here, Eva.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure to be here and chit-chatting with you, I suppose.
We're going to chat. Yeah, we're going to do a lot of chatting. I feel like there's so many accolades, but I want to share, your story. Tell us how you got started and a little bit more about you and your path.
So right now I run a fund in Toronto, based out in Toronto, and invest in very early stage technology companies. And why am I doing this is really about curiosity, learning about new things. And I have to say that it traced all the way back, during the early years when I first came to Canada as a student. And then later on, my family joined me as immigrant. And build up my career after I finished my engineering degree at U of T, University of Toronto, and work at software companies, semiconductor companies. And I would say the most interesting part of my story was I met my husband when I was a teenager, and then we went to school together at U of T. He was actually 1 year senior, but we graduated at the same time. He finished his master when I finished my undergrad, and because he fast-tracked his master, and then we pretty much worked together since then. So it all rooted in the whole curiosity of engineering, trying to kind of understand how things works, and that's the curiosity mind and entrepreneurial, I would say, journey bring to where we are right now. So where else? What else do you want to know? Give me something.
I want to talk. Okay, there's a few different topics I want to talk about. I want to talk about investing and how you got into the VC world because it's so interesting, entrepreneurship. But really, okay, I want to talk about this because you just talked about it a little bit. You hinted towards it. How the hell do you work with your partner? Like, I can't even imagine working with my husband and like we parent together. Okay, I get that, but running, and you guys ran a very successful company. So first of all, tell us a little bit about that and how you got started with Wattpad. And then how did you do it with your partner?
Okay, good. So we will just build on that backbone. And I'll explain to you how, the two of us kind of like the total opposite of each other, but at the same time, continuously to bring out the best of each other to get to where we are today. So me and Alan met, as I said, when we were teenagers. He was already he finished first year uni, and while I was going into university at that summer, that's when we met through some common friends. And since then, it's kind of like we're inseparable. I don't know what I see in him, and I don't know what he sees in me, but we're okay. So the journey, I would say, started because I work in a software company. He ended up in another big company. He worked in IBM. I work at a small software company, and I was so swamped with work because startup, you got to do a lot of things. Wear a lot of hats. You just have to kind of move things forward. Whereas he was at IBM, a much bigger organization, more structured, more process oriented. Things relatively same compared to a startup certainly went a lot slower. And it was not really his DNA. Like initially he thought that was what he wanted to do, but then very quickly he realized that he saw me having all these fun, playing with the latest and the greatest technology. He's kind of like, I got to join this ship. So later on, he joined the same company. We work under the same mentors. And that's how we kind of started our journey, work as a working couple in organizations. And that's how we kind of like set the foundation. So fast forward to, the .com days when Bright Spark Labs became one of a very interesting incubator back then. We joined the company. And Bright Spark Lab was actually co-founded by our mentors in the first company. So we got parachuted into multiple companies at a time. Because it's an incubator, we at any point in time, me and Alan will be separately mentoring or working in 2 to 3 companies. So the funny thing was, there was a period of time that we were assigned to two companies at the same time. In one company, I reported to him, and the other company, he reported to me.
Like, how did you do that? I don't understand. I can't wrap my head around it. Like the power dynamics and like, how you divide like and conquer and like the role, like it sounds so challenging. And for people listening who do work with their partners, they're probably like, no, it's not that hard. But for me, and like, it's really hard to understand.
It's actually very hard in some ways, but at the same time, very easy in some ways. Because both me and Alan are type A. Like maybe I'm the louder A, he's more quiet A, but he's a very, very strong A, and I'm not, a small A either. So both of us have this whole mentality of pushing the envelope, getting things done, and obviously feel that I'm right and she's wrong, or I'm right and he's wrong, that kind of like dynamics. We have it all the time. So I guarantee you that I don't even know how many times that we have been fighting on issues all the time. And I remember there was one conversation that we actually had in the car when we were driving back home back in days. I don't even know what we were arguing, but it must be some business issue. So we were like fighting and that kind of stuff. And I was like, stop. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I said, I'm done. And then I was obviously not very happy. I looked the other way to the window and huffing and puffing. And he was kind of like, and he's a sweet guy. He's always give me that olive branch. He said like, how are you doing today? And I looked at him. I'm like, I had a big fight with my boss. You okay?
Okay, so humor is important.
And then all of a sudden we both laughed and we were okay. So that's a foundation that we kind of like, build together. And I think that's exactly why we can build Wattpad together. Wattpad, for those of you who are, right now listening in, may not necessarily have a lot of experience with it, but it's a platform that allows people to share fictional stories, chapter by chapter. I have over 1 billion stories already shared on our platform. Every day with 1 million new chapters being shared from sci-fi, teen fake romance, you name it. We have 100 million monthly users, where 5 million of them are writing stories every day. And why is one of the Canadian successes? Because in 2021, the company was acquired by Naver, the South Korean tech giant, for over 800 million US.
Yeah, just a small penny.
800 million cats. So let's correct. $800 million. And certainly it's one of the most successful acquisition in the last decade in the tech ecosystem. So certainly, it was not an easy thing to do. I still remember during the early days, it was very, very tough because Alan and his co-founder, Ivan, built a company started in 2006. And it was pre-iPhone days, pre-Kindle days. So for people to understand the concept of reading and writing a stories on a mobile phone, it's kind of like really ahead of its time. So I still remember during the early days, we would receive a check from Google AdSense for $2. And that's our monthly revenue. So you can imagine how hard it was for us to put everything on the line for the company. One night, me and Alan were discussing, should we sell the house to continue to fund the journey? And it was a very tough conversation. It was not easy. So from 2006 all the way, I would say fast forward to 2008, that's when we finally have some meaningful traction on the platform because guess what? iPhone 3 came out, Kindle came out. People start to realize, oh, you can actually do, storytelling on a mobile device. So leverage the mobile technology trend and the social sharing trend that were very strong during that time frame. That's when I joined the company in 2009 and helped them grow the user base from tens of thousands of users to tens of millions of users. So during that journey, it's no longer about who's reporting to whom, who's right and who's wrong. It's about we have no other option but to make this work. And when that happened, basically, it's no longer about pride. It's no longer about is he loving me or that kind of thing. It's like we have to make sure that this thing doesn't break. This thing has to work, and then that trumps everything else.
It's so inspiring because, people like me who are doing, or at that early stage that you were at in 2006 and, trying to build these companies from scratch and just having an idea and trying to build it. It's inspiring to also hear, your struggles. So what was was there a point at the beginning where you were just going to be like, fuck this, I'm done? And how did you overcome that? Because you obviously, kept going and you managed somehow. So how did you kind of get past that point? Because the beginning is tough.
Yeah, the beginning is very, very tough, right? Because give you a little bit more context. I just finished my MBA part-time at the time. I gave birth to two children and they were toddlers and toddlers at the time. And eventually my elder one became a grade 1, grade 2. Yeah, I think that's about right when during the very growth cycle of Wattpad. So, and Alan actually co-founded a company before that. And for him to give up that and start something new, it's really, really a big bet. Lucky that me and Alan have been always in a tech ecosystem, particularly during the early stage startups. You remember we work at one incubator that he report to me and I report to him, in 2 companies. So we have seen many companies who have gone through that cycle of like, they may start off like this and eventually get killed, or they may, start up and then, kind of rise a little bit and eventually get killed. And we certainly have seen some go like that and eventually go like that. So our risk appetite in some ways is very different than people who have never seen a startup journey. We understood what it took to become something massive, but a lot of luck and many things has to align to make that happen. So me and Alan, when he started the company, he actually started the company with Ivan behind my back. I didn't even know until he came back and said, I'm doing this with Ivan. I'm like, what are you saying? Like, why would people read on the phone? That's a stupid idea because the phone was so small. This is pre-iPhone days, right? But knowing what I know about Alan, meaning that he is an entrepreneur. He really, when he put his heart to it, he has to try it. Otherwise, he will have regret. So I said, well, sure, let's just do it. But the good thing that we have done, like anything else in our life, is to always draw a line on the sand. It's like, this is not this is the line that we will never cross. So when he started the company in 2006, the tail end of it, he said, give me 2 years. Give me 2 years. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, forget about it. So in the midst of it, obviously, it was so much harder than he imagined. He thought that everything would be okay. Financially, it may not necessarily be making big money, but we would not be at the verge of losing the house. It never crossed his mind. But as we approached the 2-year mark, that's when things look so grim. I'm like, yeah, it's very, very tough. But then during that journey, a lot of things also happened. He has his side hustle. Wattpad was not working. So he and Ivan started another company with some consulting project. So we kind of like keep us, above the water, not drowning. But certainly it was not easy. And lucky that the second company, I would say the third company now that he started get a acquisition. So to kind of give us that buffer to kind of like keep our head above the water. And then later on, when iPhone came out and then took off, whatever happened became history. So I think having that line in the sand was the line that we know that we will never cross. And I told him, I said, if we have to lose the house, fine. I have no problem losing the house. Worst case, we'll just go back to my mother's place or his mother's place. We'll have a roof, above our head. It may not be glorious, but hey, we will survive, right? So,
So I want to ask you. You mentioned you had 2 small kids when you were at this stage of your life. Do you feel like there was a difference in how you showed up in the company versus Alan in terms of, you being the mom and him being the father, but you both being highly involved in the company? Was there a difference? Did you notice it? And how did you navigate that?
So absolutely. Every day, who picks up the kids from preschool? Me.
Mm-hmm.
So 3:00, I would drop everything, and I have to go now. I must go now. I cannot talk to anybody. I must go now. And as soon as I settle the kids to bed at 7:30, 8:00 at night, that's when I start to boot up my computer and start working again. For him, I'm not saying that he has an easy life. He just kept going. He just kept going all the way till like before he goes to bed. Some people will kind of like, oh, isn't that unfair? Because he didn't have to go pick up the kids. I did. But at the same time, he was the one who traveled the most. When he actually has to fundraising, he would be the one on the road. When he had to negotiate deals, because Wattpad eventually became an entertainment company that we turn a lot of those popular stories into TV shows, movies, and books. So he had to interact with a lot of these entertainment partners. Then he would be on the road. So in a way, I think it's a divide and conquer approach, that he would take care of those things in the companies, and I would take care of the family while I contribute continuously also in the company, but just different time zone. So knowing that that's really his baby, I always knew that I would be there to support him. So I did not necessarily see that it's like something, a career for me. I wanted to be there for him. So maybe that's the mindset is slightly different, to begin with. But obviously, when I was building the company, I put in my 120%, 150% to build a platform for the users to make sure the company is successful. I contribute no differently. But I think deep down, I knew I was doing all those for the success of the company, for the pursuit of history.
That's really actually lovely and quite beautiful. And then, so how did you go from all of that into the VC world? Like, tell me about that transition and Tell us a little bit about that, because a lot of people and speak a little bit in layman's terms for people who don't understand what the venture capital world is like, and tell us how you got there. Like, why venture capital? Why entrepreneurs?
So yeah, so the VC world or the venture capital world, basically the idea is when you see great companies or great startups, great founders, they may have the aspiration to build something massive, like to build the next Wattpad or to build the next Shopify. Initially, it's always hard because they have to quit their jobs, they have to focus on what they want to build. But at the same time, someone has to pay the bill. Simple things like hiring some software engineers to help build a company, or like what you're building, Danny. You have to have money for the orders, at least for the prototype. So there are a lot of what we call seed money needs to go into the ecosystem to nurture these startups, and hopefully some of them will become very big and successful company. So for us, as VC, that's what we do. We see hundreds, if not thousands, of companies per year, and then we would decide, which company worth our time and energy to invest in them. So this investment, it's what we call alternative class of high risk investment, because you may actually lose all the money. So for us, we have to create a portfolio and bet on the companies and help recycle our experience and capital and nurture them into tech giants. So VC world is a big world. There will be some angel investor writing small checks. They're early stage fund like me, it may be a 20, 30, 40 $million fund. And then there'll be big funds, hundreds of millions of dollars, writing big checks into startups. And I work in the early stage companies ecosystem. Why I wanted to do it and how I did it, it was actually a funny story, because I wouldn't say a funny story, but kind of an interesting backstory. So after Alan finally get Wattpad off the ground, get a lot of users, we have tens of millions of users already on the platform. The company grew from the two co-founders to with Eva Lau, and then eventually grow to, I think at the time, 50, 60 people. And they raised Series B, and they got great investors, including Union Square, who backed Twitter, Etsy, and Foursquare, Tumblr. Many of these great companies during the time invested at Wattpad. I found myself and Alan really get sucked into the company, and that was kind of expected. But remember those days when we were working together? It was pre-kids era. Do I really want to bring in work conversation around the dining table? It's inevitable. But do I really want to do it all the time? The answer is no. And at the end of the day, I enjoy working with smaller teams. And I feel that Alan finally has the funding that's necessary to grow and scale the company. It's a time for me to take a step back from my involvement at Wattpad, spend a little bit more time with the kids, and figure out my next step. So I took 1 year off as a sabbatical, trying to kind of spend more time with my girls, and at the same time figuring out what I wanted to do next. So during that time, I basically make myself available to the ecosystem, trying to share my experience. And it's very interesting, because if you look at the Silicon Valley ecosystem compared to Toronto, you can go into any Starbucks and very easily you see a lot of founders and pitching to angel investors. Some of those angel investors may be early employees at Google's or early employees at Facebook. But when you look at the ecosystem over here, you don't necessarily see a lot of people, operator turns investors, let alone very scale up operators turn investors. And so when I was making myself available to the ecosystem, I found myself being reached out to very frequently. And people normally would just say, Eva, I don't really care about the check that you write to me. All I care is you sharing the experience with us. And so very quickly, I find myself casually meeting some entrepreneurs once or twice a month, to seeing entrepreneurs almost every day. And then very quickly seeing a couple of hundreds of companies per year. and writing angel checks to these companies, I said myself, I am one of those very rare found in here, specifically because I have been there and done that. And I provide a very different perspective, which is extremely complementary to the VC ecosystem here. So why don't I become a VC and start writing meaningful checks and investing in companies, and not only just writing small checks as an investment for myself, but to actually contribute to the ecosystem more significantly. So that's how I turned myself into a VC. Not a very traditional route for those people who have been to B school, which I have been. I've done my MBA, but a lot of the VC may have been from business side, from banking side, from financial services side, or from legal side, and then turned themselves into VCs. Operator turned VC is something that I found extremely complementary to the ecosystem.
So if someone wants to get into this world, like you said, without having the experience or background or the education, like twofold question. One, how do they get into this kind of ecosystem? And two, it's a bit of a boys' club, is it not? Like, how did you find getting in there? Because it's probably a little intimidating, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for those people who are interested to learn more about this ecosystem, I think there are multiple ways for them to learn about it. I think traditionally, for people who have been, who have the investment experience from investment banking or from early stage angel investing, or even just because they have been into MBAs, I think that's a good start to understand that world. But at the same time, for operators, you may be early employees in some companies right now. I would say getting into the VC world, there are multiple ways to do it. First of all, you can do it the traditional way of like, let me join a VC fund. Maybe start off as an analyst and as an associate to do market research, to start looking at deals. That's a very traditional way of doing it. But at the same time, it's the most difficult way to do it because it's a small ecosystem. And funds, they may be managing multi-hundred millions of dollars, but guess what? They actually don't have 40 people in a team. They may have 5 because the amount is big, but then they actually, write checks not that frequently. Some funds may be only writing checks to 5 companies per year. So they don't necessarily need 30, 40 people working in a fund. So that traditional way is usually the most difficult. But I guess, a lot of people can always create their own angel portfolio. They may park $100,000 or maybe $50,000 aside and write $5,000 checks or $10,000 checks to founders that they have come across. So that's a totally different way of starting in this whole world of angel investing. And eventually, if you really, really enjoy it, perhaps one day you'll be a VC. But that would be a journey, because when you write an angel check, it usually takes about 5 to 7 years, if not 10, to see what the outcome is. It's absolutely a boys' club, but I think it's also at the same time changing, right? Because if you look at nowadays, a lot of the internet product breaks down a lot of the barriers. Women can participate in the internet very freely, like men, and even geographically, users from all over the world can participate just like North Americans on the platform. Look at Wattpad. I would say certainly U.S. is the number one country, Wattpad has the most users. But if you looked at the other ones, the Philippines, the Indonesians, and even the Spanish community, the Spanish is very scattered. But if you look at the Spanish user base, is huge. So given that, we need more investors who can actually understand the different dynamics of the different user type. So that's why we are seeing a lot of initiatives supporting women entrepreneurs, because we know that they have basically half of the market. We also look for their ecosystem also having VC fund that specifically support women entrepreneurs, or specific funds that look for indigenous community products. So all of a sudden, then you see a lot of the diversity coming into play as well. Certainly, traditionally it's a boys club, but I'm certainly seeing a lot of diversity right now. So I think the world finally understand that collaborations with people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, is actually not 1+1 = 2, but 1+1 = 3, 4, 5, or maybe even 10. Right. So certainly it's changing. And I'm very bullish about how the diversity in the VC community will actually, I would say, give the momentum to more entrepreneurs to build their companies.
Well, you're definitely at the forefront. And, backstory. So here's how I met Alan and Eva. Okay. I threw Alan up on a runway and put him in a fashion show called City Moguls back in 2019, I think he was in. Yeah.
Yes.
And because we featured the top entrepreneurs in a big fashion show for charity. That's what we did at City Moguls. And we got this introverted Alan Lau on our stage, which was awesome, in this like stunning tuxedo. It's like still a moment like for me in my career that it was just so incredible to see him up there, and obviously got introduced to you. And I have to share this story because I had already started Maven Shea in 2020 and started building it with Victoria. And we were, trying to just do R&D and figure out how we're going to make these. And we had no concept of shoemaking. And then we had to raise money. We were bootstrapping and we said, we can't do this anymore. We have to raise some money, and started doing pitches. And we had already pitched to so many people, came to you to pitch. And you were genuinely the first person that was like, I believe in what you're doing. And you were such like a light. Like you were like, I cried on the call. Like I was so emotional because you were like, I remember you said, be careful of sharks out there. Don't be fooled. Be smart and be careful of sharks because, you guys have something really good here. And I remember just being like so overwhelmed because we had all of these pitches and they were, tons of no's, all the no's. And you were really one of the first people that was not just like, here's a check and goodbye. You were really like, I want to stand behind you and mentor you. So first of all, I have to thank you for that. And second of all, it's a big testament to who you are as an investor too, Like,
oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a big moment for me. And I'm sure I'm not alone for people who have even had just conversations with you.
Well, thank you. I think, it rooted with the fact that me and Alan almost lost everything in building Wattpad. And that loneliness, that you have no one else to turn to but your spouse, that fear, that unknown anxiety, it's real. And startup, it's very glorious. VC is also very glorious, but there's so many tears shed, blood sheds and sweat, absolutely. So I get that. I understand that. And if there's any way I can be supportive to entrepreneurs, at least emotionally, I'm more than happy to kind of share that.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and women aren't getting all the funding that they deserve. And I'm wondering if you feel like it's slowly changing and, how do you view female entrepreneurs differently? Like, that some of these women are going to get pregnant and start families, and knowing your past now with, you being the person that was cutting off at 3:00 to go pick up your kids, does it influence how you're investing ever?
I actually don't get distracted by the fact that women biologically have other functionalities that they may want to turn those functions on in their life. Not at all. But what actually, I don't want to say bothers, but I see a stark difference between women entrepreneur and men. And this is something that I think it will take some time for women entrepreneurs to really overcome. And this is the part that I think it's, there must be some study somewhere actually back what I'm about to say. Women, when we talk, we feel like if we are not telling facts,
we are potentially lying. So when I come across women entrepreneurs, they keep telling me what they are doing now, which is extremely important. And they would even tell me, what the next step they want to do and what's the plan ahead. What are the hurdles, like technical difficulties, yada, yada, yada. They tell me all those things, which is awesome. So when I pushed a little bit, what is the vision? Same thing. Like when I ask you, is it what you're only doing? Like what's the bigger vision and stuff like that? Women have a hard time communicating that because they felt that they are lying about the future. They are not certainly sure what's going to happen. Like, if this is going to work, how they're going to iterate. They have a dream, but that dream doesn't equal to reality, right? So they tend to hold that dream inside them and not say a thing about it. Whereas if you go talk to a man who are starting a companies, they will tell you exactly the same thing, the same technical difficulties, the immediate step, how they're doing it. But you say, okay, hold on. Let's say John, I get what you're doing right now, but tell me what the vision is. Tell me what 5, 7, 10 years is going to look like. They will very quickly shift gear and put on the Superman cape and tell you how they're going to fly from there. And that, to them, is not a problem. And I don't understand why women have a hard time sharing with us their dreams. I think we were not taught that way.
I agree. And I struggle with this a lot. Like, I think that I'm a very confident person. I think I have an amazing idea. I'm a very scrappy individual. I have a lot of, determination and motivation. And yet I think that my male counterparts, exactly what you said, can go into a meeting and talk about all of the things that they're going to do. And I feel as though I need to stay, quote unquote, humble about it. Why? I think it's to your point. Like, I don't think we were taught to be bold, and I don't think we were taught to be a little bit cocky, which I think is important in entrepreneurship. So how do we change this? Like, how do we teach our girls? We both have girls. What are you doing with your girls now?
I think, for me, what I have always been trying to do, I would say at least in the most recent years, is to tell them their limit is the sky. They just have to reach, to at least try. Otherwise, they would never know if they can actually reach it. And I think the biggest issue that my girls, sometimes I notice, is they see the immediate problem as a ginormous roadblock. And because of the ginormous roadblock in front of them, they dare not to dream. They focus all of their energy of how do I fix this roadblock. And that, to me, while it's very pragmatic, very important, but they focus too much on that and end up losing sight of where they really wanted to go to. Because that roadblock, maybe you don't actually have to solve it. You just have to walk around it.
Metaphorically speaking, yes.
Yes. You got that word right from me. Right? But you know what I mean? Like, that big rock, sometimes you have to chip it away. Sometimes you have to bring in the heavy loaded dynamite and just go boom. But you can just also just walk around it. And that's, I think, what the issue is. I think women have a tendency of solving the problem. So so this is the thing. This is the difference. I think problem solver, it's in our DNA, which is great.
right? Because remember, like back in the days when you bicker with your husband or whatever, and if they don't want to talk about it, they want to drop it, they don't want to move on. If nothing happened, it bugs the hell out of us because we think our problem is not resolved. We have to talk about it. We have to talk it through, making sure that, we don't go into the same pigeonhole again. We want to solve the problem. But men kept sight in the bigger picture. It's like, that's okay with a bicker. That's all right. Let's not worry about it. Let's just focus on the big picture, how we continue to have a great, relationship. Maybe I'll just buy her flowers and she'll be okay. I'll take her to a vacation and that will be okay. So they don't necessarily solve that problem, but they focus on the bigger picture and keep moving. Women have a tendency, maybe, I'm just exaggerating right now, maybe a lot of the audience right now is like, no, Eva, that's not how I do it. But I'm just, obviously stereotyping right now is sometimes we get so focused on solving a problem and not necessarily kind of like let it go or not to worry much about it, but focusing on the bigger picture, the longer term goal. And maybe that's a difference.
It's also it almost sounds like it's also a perfectionism thing. Like women are less okay with having things not done, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it's just that concept of we want things to be as good as they possibly can, maybe before starting the company or launching it or, continuing to grow a brand. Like it's that constant, it has to be perfect. And I think something that we can learn from the male entrepreneurs is that it's actually really messy and the journey is really messy and that's okay. And that's the way that's how to grow it when it's just kind of a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I think, for me, especially when it comes to the context of startup, sometimes to have something good enough and release it to the market to get real feedback from your customers is much better than, you're trying to perfect it and think people will like it, because what we think may actually not be the truth. So getting the product out in the hands of users so that they can actually give us real feedback, I think that's actually very crucial in the context of startups.
Absolutely. Are there some standout companies that have, common themes within them, that have gone out to be successful? And is there a common theme or, are you seeing a lot? Yeah.
I would say yes. I think, so I'll tell you some secrets, when we built Wattpad and how did we build it on the other side of the curtain. So obviously, when Alan and Ivan started the company, they are two technologists, engineers, and they love mobile computing, and that's how they started the company. And so finally, when they got some traction with the platform because of iPhone 3 came out, when I joined them, my number one job is to make sure that the users are engaged and happy, the product is working for the users. So eating your own dog food is basically what we need to do in the startup world. Because if you don't even like your own product, how do we expect users to like your own product? Right? So that's why very quickly, when I joined them, not only do I support the users, I start using the product as a reader, read a lot of romance. They are pretty good. And at the same time, I start writing my own stories.
Oh, I didn't know that you did that.
Yes. Why? Because I wanted to know that thrill of when you share a chapter, you anticipate people to read it. What do I really want to know? Do I want to just read the read counts? Or do I actually crave for people's comment? And when I get the comment, what kind of feeling did it invoke in me? So all of a sudden, I put myself in the shoe of a writer. And that helped me to understand the psychology and helped me to build product features that enable them to have a ton of fun on our platform. So same thing, if we look at how Toby built Shopify, he built the product for himself first. And then eventually he's like, you know what? Everybody who wants to start their own small business online probably would have the same problem that I was dealing with. We productize this and then become something that solved the problem that he understood. Slack is another example. They were not building Slack at the time. They were building something else, and then but they want to kind of have a communication system within the company so that they can be very effective and very quick. And that's how they build Slack. And then eventually they're like, hold on a second, this is actually more interesting, right? Airbnb. People started the companies because they are the one who couch surf all the time. And they're like, why don't people do this? So a lot of the times when we build products, getting user feedback, the very first way, easier way to do is eat your own dog food. You look at the product and like, will I pay myself? If the answer is no, then it's not good enough. But obviously, sometimes, whether you want to pay $5 versus you want to pay $500 for that product, that's kind of like debatable. Maybe you want to eventually, get a product out that at the $500 price point. Maybe you first release it at the $100 price point and see what the market actually say. What do you need to go move up to the higher price point? Or you know what, your product is never going to reach that price point and maybe you should lower it. So those are the things that you have to kind of like figure it out, real users versus yourself. But I think, eating your own dog food is the number one step.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I hate dog food, but I understand the concept. So I would consider you someone who's high performance. And I don't say that very often. You are truly a high performer and it's very admirable, but it's also tricky because you want to do so much. And I'm very much the same in that way. There's so much I want to do. There's not a lot of time. How do you manage everything?
It's hard. It's very, very hard because there are two devils that we have to deal with. One is FOMO. The other one is perfectionist. Because why I do a lot of things is sometimes it's certainly I enjoyed it. If I don't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. But then also it's FOMO, right? Like, oh, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? Or, oh, there's an event, I have to go. I got to see what's going on. I got to meet some founders. Like for us, meeting founders is number one job. It's like, go meet founders. So not doing those things, sometimes it's really about FOMO. Like what if the founder meet another fund in the ecosystem and I just happen to see it, then I miss an opportunity to put money in them. That would drive me crazy, right? But then at the same time, perfectionism is also a problem because when you go to event, you cannot be unprepared. Pitch events, you cannot not know any of these companies. And sometimes, if it is a gala, even though, you may not necessarily be meeting a lot of founders there, but you never know. So you cannot just show up at a gala without much preparation. You at least need to know what the gala is all about. Who are the people in there? Are you dressed appropriately? Those are those perfectionists is kind of like also can eat us up. And so when you have these two devils continuously, trying to fight for your attention, one thing that grounds me is purpose. Purpose not only for the purpose in terms of the event, but in some ways, my purpose in life. Because a lot of these things will always drive you crazy because you fear of missing out and you want to be perfectionist. And what ends up happening is the two most precious thing in your life will get eaten up. First of all, it's your time. Everyone has 24 hours. No one has more, right? So if you start worry about missing out opportunities, then you fill up your calendar with a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing just because of fear of missing out. And then the other thing, the flip side of it is you're actually going to be sacrificing basically your personal life, right? Because personal life can be relationship with your children or relationship with our parents or even spousal relationship, personal time, wellness. Those things, when we're working 24/7, what you sacrifice is that personal life. So finding that balance and finding the life purpose will help you being able to draw the line when to cross it and when it's not. And I think, the purpose in life, certainly it's a big grandeur thing to like, oh, what's my purpose in life? But let's just compartmentalize it a little bit, maybe through stage. Like when I'm a student, the purpose in life is to make sure to build myself up so that I can take on the world later on. And then when we first get into the workforce and start our career, the purpose in life is to make sure you learn as much as you can from remarkable people so that you can continue to build your career and make a living and not end up on the street. So that's the purpose of what you need to do. So that's how I would say it's the driver that makes us make trade-off. So when we married, when me and Alan got married, the purpose is to make sure that we have a strong marriage, foundation. So when even during that time when we work in the same company, you remember we talked about he reports to me and I reported to him. The purpose of our journey during those years is to build a strong marriage foundation. So that is untouchable. Like whatever that things that kind of like chip in that piece of the pie, like totally like hands off. Like that's not touchable. We will not sacrifice anything that affect the purpose during those few years is to build a solid foundation. So right now at my stage of life, I want to make sure that I can leverage my experience, my journey, and be the bigger voice, at least for my children, for my daughters, showing them that we as Asian women, Canadian, we can still reach our dreams and be able to do things that we wanted to do. And in this very diverse and inclusive, country. To me, that's the purpose. So if that's the case, I want to be mindful with my time. Not only do I want to do things professionally, I want to make sure that I have time to share with them. Imagine if I spend all of my time building my professional career, whatever role model I want to become, I will never have the opportunity to communicate with them. So that doesn't mean anything if I become a very successful career woman, but have no time to share time with them to make cookies or make Chinese dumplings, to have these very casual table talks. The relationship would not be there to achieve my purpose, even though I may have done extraordinarily professionally. That doesn't make sense. So that to me, it's what helps me to guide me of when to engage and when not to engage from my time wise with my job.
This is so good. Just such good reminders. We get so caught up in all of the like professional things we're doing, and you have like blinders on and you're just going at 100 miles an hour at your business. And it's such a good reminder to just kind of step back and remember those things. I actually would love to learn how to make Chinese dumplings. I love dumplings.
Well, come over and I'll show you.
Done. I'm going to take you up on it. Eva, okay, let's do some, I call this rapid fire, but everyone, like yells at me because it's not really that rapid. So I have to call it something else. Semi-rapid fire. Okay. Here we go. In 3 words, describe yourself pre-kids, and in 3 words, describe yourself post-kids.
Dreamer, impatient, confident. This is the pre-children day of me. After having children, I would say humbled, learner, confident. You can see the same vibe, about confidence. I think, before that I have the confidence in myself. That's why I dream a lot and thinking that I can take on the world. But once you have kids, everybody get humbled. And you have to learn.
Agree.
But now that I'm confident that I'm a learner, you see the difference? It's still confident, but it was a confident achiever to now I'm a confident learner.
I love that. I feel like that will resonate with a lot of people. What's one thing you would tell your pre-kid self about being an ambitious working mom?
Slow down. Slow down. I think I was very impatient. So a lot of things. Well, not that I'm very patient right now. But what I'm trying to say is, like, back in the days, I'm even more impatient, and I think it's important to slow down, take a breather, take your time.
Hmm. Do you have a worst mom moment of all time that you're willing to share?
Absolutely, and this is the part that that's the worst mom moment that I will never forget. So during the early days of Wattpad, um, as I said, it was very difficult. Every month we have $2 of revenue. We get into deeper debt than we would love to. Well, no one loves debt, but I would want to, I would say. So I remember my older daughter, maybe at the time, 7 or 8 years old, elementary school. I remember that very vividly. And at the time, she was going to a Montessori school. She was learning piano and she was doing figure skating. But money was certainly very, very, very tight. So one night, after her homework, or there was actually no homework, but maybe bedside stories, and about to tuck her into bed, and I have this very difficult conversation with her. I say, "Babe, honey, sweetheart, mommy and daddy, and don't have a lot of money. We are okay right now, but I'm pretty sure that we maybe, one day have to save some more money in order to get on with life." Maybe not those big words, but the gist was there. And I may have to either take you out from the school that you're in right now, or cut your piano, meaning no more piano, or figure skating. If you have to choose, what would you want to give up? She looked at me, 7 or 8 year old. I need a good education so that I can find a good job and give you money, mommy. I play the piano pretty well. You remember the piano competition I just did? I was the first place, so I got $50 for scholarship. You can use that too. I love figure skating, but I'm not very good at it. I still cannot do the spin very well. So maybe I'll give up figure skating if that's what you need. It broke my heart. You know why? Out of all those things, you love figure skating the most. Like, even right now, thinking back that moment, that's the worst mom moment, because I was putting this idea in a 7-year-old head, and she has to figure it out what to give up for the family. 7-year-old giving up something she loved the most just to make sure that the family can go on. It was a necessary thing I did. Was I proud of it? Not really, but
Oh my God, you're making me tear up now. That is, it's so hard. And it's like, in those moments, you probably just, you want to break down. And then you think probably back on all of your whole life and what you're able to give to your beautiful children, even though you had to risk so much at the beginning, right? Like, it's so hard in those moments. And I'm so, thank you for sharing that. That's so, like, it's so emotional, but it's like, it really is important to hear these things, because I'm going to have tough conversations with my daughter too one day. And it's like a good reminder that, you will get through that kind of stuff one way or another.
yeah,
So
I think,
you.
it certainly, some people may not agree with what I did. Maybe I was too transparent with the children. But at the same time, I feel that I didn't want to end up like, oh, you know what, make up excuse and say, oh, we gotta not do piano now, or oh, we gotta not do. Kids need contacts, and maybe there was a better way of doing it. Maybe I'm open to the audience to tell me how I should have done it. But I guess, right now, I think, in hindsight, it allows me to have this strong bonding with my daughter, knowing that even though we may fight, she may be rebellious, she may be disagreeing with me, but deep down, she loved us so much that I also loved her immensely. that I would move mountain for her.
Such a testament to like what you guys are like as parents, that's how she responded, you know? What is the most rewarding part for you being a working mother?
The most rewarding part being a working mother, I cannot detach that without the context of being a woman of color in Canada. Immigrant, English is not my first language. My daughters, I should say, plural, kept correcting my mistakes. But the rewarding part was to show them that we could do it. And this country, it's welcoming for us to reach for the sky. So the rewarding part is when they come back and say, oh, Mom, do you know I met so-and-so and they talked about you? I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm a cool mom now. I'm not that, dumb mom that doesn't know how to TikTok. I know how to TikTok.
I'm a cool mom. Yeah. That's
Cool
what every
mom,
kid
yeah.
wants to hear about their mom. Their mom saying that I'm a cool mom, right?
That's right.
Okay, I have two final questions for you. What advice would you give to women who are like you and I, who have motivation and desires and dreams, but want to start a family while pursuing a demanding career?
I would say make sure that you and your spouse are on the same page, because in Chinese way of saying, you cannot clap with one hand, so you need another hand to do it. Yay! Right? So make sure that you are on the same page with your partner, so that there's no surprise. It may be a tough conversation. At the end of the day, make sure that the foundation is the marriage. It's not the company. The foundation is the marriage. That's important.
I love that. And thank you so much. This was so nice. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about like personal stuff. So this has like been really meaningful for me because we talk a lot about business. So this is a very nice, breath of fresh air. So thank you for being here and sharing your stories and being so vulnerable. And I'm sure people are going to take a lot away from that episode. So thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Lovely chatting with you.
You too, Eva.
Love today's episode? Subscribe and share with another amazing woman and follow me at the Double Shift Podcast for more. Do you know someone that would be an incredible guest? Head to DannyTeagan.com. Have a beautiful rest of your day.